Hi, this is Mark from the Fireside Talks Hearthstone podcast, and you're listening to Concede.
Greetings.
Hello.
Greet.
My greetings.
Well met.
I greet you.
Greetings, traveler.
Greetings, friend.
The pleasure is mine.
Welcome to episode 109 of Concede, a Hearthstone podcast dedicated to making the competitive side of the game more accessible to you. My name is Kenny, and I go by KCCO Gamer. And joining us from Gadgetzan, New York, we have Ridiculous Hat.
Hello.
And from Karazhan, California, we have Bodicus.
Howdy.
Alrighty. Just the three of us again. Tried to get Cora, but she needs to rest. So we will hear from her soon. Too bad she won't be with us in BlizzCon, though. Or we'll all be there for Convoy of the Storm. We're still up in the air with Bodicus for the actual BlizzCon, but
yeah,
I'm excited.
I'm excited to see you guys.
Yay.
I can't wait to meet you guys and so many listeners.
Exactly. I'll actually be able to reach across and actually touch you, unlike I can't on the screen here.
Kenny, stop. Kenny, you can't reach through the computer.
Can I reach? Okay, yeah, stop.
Yeah. I'm wearing my In-N-Out Burger hat to get in that California state of mind, though we had an unfortunate pre-show discussion where I determined that I am the only host that likes In-N-Out Burger of the three of us, and also the only one that doesn't live near one.
Okay, I will go back and say I don't not like In-N-Out. I like In-N-Out. It's just not my favorite burger joint. I'll say that.
I will just say that I like a lot of other burger places more than I like In-N-Out.
Are we softening up?
I'm just looking forward to the double animal style I'll be eating by this time tomorrow, and I'm going to relish exposure to In-N-Out Burger and good Mexican food for the 4 days I'll be in California, and then I get to come back to the land of pizza and bagels.
I just can't wait to see you, and then your appetite and how it fits in you. That's what I want to be able to witness.
Seeing me in person doesn't make that question easier to answer. It creates a lot more questions.
Alrighty. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So, funny enough, it's a slow week, but we do have a jam-packed show. So thank you, everybody, for reaching out to us with suggestions. So Concede is supported in a large part by you, obviously, from our show today. If you'd like to find out how you can support us and receive rewards in return, head to patreon.com/CoinConcede. Let me go ahead and start off by saying I topped off at rank 1 at ending the month there. But I've been, just mowing the lawn, back and forth between 1 and 3, 1 and 3, 1 and 3. I was like, I ended up rank 4. Just because I just gave up. I had an hour and a half, and I went down to rank 3. I was like, all right, I'm just gonna play some rogue decks and mess around. But it's okay. At the end of the month, I ended as if I was at 1, so leveled up to rank 15, and that's where I'm sitting today on the first day. Bodicus, you had a pretty successful month.
Yeah, I had a really great month actually in Hearthstone. Got to do a lot of coachings. That was a lot of fun, and got legend early in standard. So I did the legend push in wild, and was able to get double legend. The last weekend on Sunday, I tried to kind of push for a somewhat high, legend finish in standard, and didn't really make any progress. So Destiny finally patched its game, so I was able to play. So past 2 days I've just been playing Destiny, but now that the season's reset, I'm real excited to play a bunch. Looking for, I don't know what I'm going to climb with this month, probably going to start on Big Druid. Big Druid was getting pretty popular at the end of the season, so I'll start there and kind of see what I feel like doing for the rest of the month.
You're muted, buddy.
Oh, well, I was calling on you, but you can go ahead and start.
Yes. Hey. So I found myself in a weird situation. I was supposed to go away for the weekend, except I forgot that Dominican Republic wasn't in the United States, and I forgot that passports had to be renewed. So, my lovely
Oh
girlfriend.
wait, you have a bumper for that though.
Oh God, you're making
I
me
felt
play.
bad for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the right bumper right there. So, luckily, had travel insurance, got the refund for my share of the ticket. My lovely girlfriend, Fly That Kite, she went and enjoyed herself, though, of course, obviously not as much fun without me there. And we are in the process of first booking an appointment at the passport agency, and second, booking our actual vacation. Now, this was a family trip, but the next one will be just us, so she got to kind of go on the scouting
that's
run.
nice.
But I found myself kind of a mopey weekend, and Hearthstone, I enjoyed it, but I was having a lot of trouble finding a deck that felt good over the weekend, and I just wanted something to kind of take my mind off things. So I actually took the weekend off of Hearthstone and played a fair amount of World of Warcraft. I hang out with a bunch of the old THL guys, Team Hearth League, which is the league I play in. A lot of them are really into World of Warcraft now, so they said if you sign up this weekend, we'll help power level you. And I played a lot of WoW over the weekend. I don't intend for that to be a full-time thing or anything more than like a hobby every so often, because I just don't have any more time during the week. But it was a nice that was my vacation this weekend. Um, so I logged back in last night, played a few games, got back in the swing of things. I finished at rank 2, and opened a golden ultimate infestation out of my chest, so I'm pretty happy about that. And after
Yeah, I saw that.
BlizzCon, I am planning
Looks
on
sweet.
hitting the ladder pretty hard, and I'm going to try and get legend out of the way earlier. And also, I only have 100 wins left with priest, so I'm almost free. I'm almost 9 out of 9 golden.
Wow.
Have you looked at the new Silence Priest lists?
Oh
that
yeah.
might be a place to
Well,
start.
I've been playing a little bit
Depending
of
on what
that.
it looks like.
It's fun, but the deck feels like it goes pretty all in pretty fast, and either they have it or they don't. And I don't like that feeling where just I throw all my cards on the table and it's out of my hands. I'm sure there's better ways to play it, and I could practice it a lot, but I don't intend to play more than once I get Golden Priest. I intend to be done with the class for a little while, because it's been a couple months of that now. I know I could play something else and just leave it, but I want it so bad. I want it.
I've been playing against several Inner Fire priests, and they've been
Yeah.
doing pretty good.
Yeah, Silence Priest definitely plays Divine Spirit Inner Fire. I've been playing a lot Appa hit Legend with Dragon Priest with Inner Fire Divine Spirit, which is also what I've been playing. And that deck
that's
is
the one I've
is
seen the most.
quite good against Priest and Druid, and it's pretty bad against all the zoos that are out there. I mean, it's not like unwinnable bad, because you still have Dragonfire Potion, and if you get the right opener, then you're fine. But I wouldn't call it favored enough to feel good about it, because you don't play Pain at all. And the number of times I've lost to Fledgling and to Southsea Captain or vice versa is significant enough, especially now that all the zoos have Serenite Chain Gang, and that just slows down your ability to clear their board.
That card is so good.
Yeah, really, really
and
good.
also so annoying. How long can this go on?
So it's a missed opportunity that I didn't get a bumper for that. I'm gonna write that down for
Yeah.
next week.
I've seen some cruel warlock decks too that's been successful. Cruel with Gul'dan, like it's like summon your minions multiple times after the priest plays their Death Knight. It's been pretty crazy, I'd say. I think it's good. I haven't checked it out, and we actually have hint hint. We have in our deck explanations. We're going to go over a couple of deck doctors that was sent in from our listeners. So
yeah, I find it really interesting that I've been listening to a lot of other Hearthstone podcasts, and people are talking about the metagame getting stale, and I'm just kind of, maybe it's that I'm kind of pretty fresh back into Hearthstone, and so I'm still in that honeymooning phase, but I don't know, this metagame feels great to me. It feels like it shifts every month. and in the middle of the month. There's tons of different decks to play. There's very few classes that are just strictly unplayable. I mean, I've been having a really great time with it, and I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts? Have you been getting kind of tired of this format? Are you ready for the new expansion, or are you still finding a lot of different stuff to play?
I'll let you go ahead.
So I think this meta is an interesting meta full of boring decks, which happened with Ungoro too. At the end of Ungoro, like there were still a lot of decks viable, except it seemed like half of them were mages. At the end of this meta, I still don't think it's been figured out. I think there are decks that have flied under the radar. There's a ton of big druid and big priest coming up, and I saw even a big warlock over the last week. But a lot of these decks, we've seen how they operate, and the metagame is full of things that we're used to seeing as well. Maybe the percentages that they might appear, the specific card choices might change, but after 3 months, it's time for new cards, and then that fourth month is usually kind of a lame duck standard. And the meta in Dual Class Arena is way more fun right now because Dual Class Arena is amazing.
Yeah, my experience is this is why I let you go first, because you play in standard more than I am. In wild, I'd say priest is pretty strong, but I'm still getting a good variance. Like I actually was playing a hunter deck that got me to rank 1, which was funny enough with Bear Shock. It was just really good against priest, and yeah, so I was having fun playing that. And yeah, priest is just stronger the more cards you get in wild. So it's still a strong deck, but it's not all priest, So, and also different parts of the month, like early in the month, you're gonna see a lot more aggro. Later in the month, you're gonna see more control. Yeah, that's what I see.
And also, it feels the one thing I think is that priest just gets stronger the more cards are added to the pool, because obviously, when you have a deck full of one-ofs, sometimes you're playing some not super optimal cards, and if you add just one or two very strong cards to the priest deck, it's just going to get better. But then after this new set comes out, and then the set following it, we have a big rotation. I think priest will probably fall off again. Maybe not so much in wild, because wild obviously never has the rotation, but hopefully the some more synergy cards come out that maybe knock priest down a peg or two, because if there's stronger synergies, maybe priest doesn't have the perfect answers to deal with everything.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if they add more cards to your opponent's deck, like Beneath the Grounds and stuff like that. Seems like that would be a good hard counter. Who knows, for singleton decks.
Yeah.
All right, so that was our ladder. We're trying to just skip on the coaching. It's not that we don't care, or we have a lot of fun, and it just takes up valuable space when we could be talking about other things. So all we'll mention this week is our new pledges. Thank you, Gregory P, Drew B, and Chris M, for your support of our show. We do appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. And for those of you that are listening to this, hopefully this show will be up by November 2nd or 3rd. If you are a patron and you are owed coaching, the form will be going out this week. We just need Patreon to finish processing your pledges. But emails will be coming out, and we are continuing to look to improve our organizational system in the back end. So we should be able to get everybody. We got everybody this past month. Shout out to Bodicus for being the last-minute coach catcher. That anyone that slipped through the cracks, he's like, I got you. And I think he coached 3 people in the last day of the month with an hour's notice. So we will find a way to make it happen. You will get your coaching. Just watch out for a forum email in the next couple days.
Yep, can't wait for next month. This month.
The quicker you are at getting back to us, the better it is for you getting it done and out of the way early, or if you're concerned about it being late like that. So, especially if you have a very busy schedule, the earlier you're getting into us, the better it is for you to get it in time. So, I was going to say something else, but I think I forget. Oh, well. I was going to give some hints. We're fully expecting to have this done and actually posted in the morning tomorrow. So that way we have time to actually be at BlizzCon and meet the people that are going to be showing up And a couple hints. We're going to throw out a couple things, extra episodes this week. We're hoping, cross our fingers. We're hoping to get the panel out, maybe even do a live one if possible. We'll see what we can do and put together on a short notice. So keep your ears open for that. I'm going to pass it over to Hat for the bumper of our news. All right, so I feel, Bodikus, you've been a little bit on top of the Nemsy nonsense, as we're going to put it here. You want to mention a little bit about the news with that and how Blizzard responded?
I actually didn't see this one.
Right.
Well, I didn't see a lot of it. I do know that, thankfully Blizzard came out and, addressed the issue. It's good to see them actually responding to all the cries out of people and kind of what they're going to be doing in the future to make, because firesides are really important. Just getting people out to play Hearthstone together in person is a really great way to grow the game. So, making sure that they're providing the best firesides that they can is very important. So we have a link in the show notes actually with their response. And do one of you guys want to kind of talk about some of the things that are that were on there?
So
Q Hat.
yes, I'm queued. So first things first, there are a couple smaller issues that you can work around and a couple of things that they have to work around. The appear offline thing, it's relatively new in the Battle.net client. You can actually appear as invisible while you're playing. But if you have it set to appear offline and then you go to a fireside, even if you change it back at the fireside, it might not work. So change it back from appear offline to a normal online status before you get there. Even if you're bringing a computer, even if you can change the status there, do it before you get there, and then you are less likely to run into the bug where some players that switch from appear offline do not become part of the fireside. And then there is an issue they discussed with some taverns showing an incorrect number of patrons when there's particular peak tavern activity. I imagine this is, you think your Saturday afternoons and evenings when the most number of taverns are active at once. Sometimes Blizzard servers are not really equipped to handle that. They're looking to upgrade them, and they said as much, but they said there's an infrastructure issue with maximum number of tavern users they can handle at once. So that should be fixed pretty soon. And they also just talked about how there are going to be punishments for either people that create fireside gatherings with false or quote-unquote inappropriate information, and people who abuse the Fire Guide gathering system to either make fake gatherings or to impact the play experience of others at these get-togethers. So I don't know what that is alluding to, but they said that they're not gonna take it laying down, that they're gonna do something about it if people are found to be abusing the system. So at least Blizzard is showing that that this is something that is serious to them, and I'm glad they came out and made a statement.
It's nice to have a little bit of clarity, and I'm surprised that that many people are playing Invisible. I don't play, and it seemed like some of the events there was only like 2 people that would get Nemsy, but I've been seeing a lot more Nemsy on ladder this week, so feels like it's been heard and fixed. So I like it. All right, so the next piece of news is going to be what's announced at BlizzCon. It should be in the opening ceremony, which is the new golden legendary that has been the buzz, called Marin the Fox. So I'm excited to see this. I think this was confirmed with Ben Brode. So we have a question about this later. We may go over that. But yeah, rumors are basically speculating a pirates or high seas themed as far as a set. Pirates, yeah. Are.
There was a theory that it is that Gadgetzan is now a coastal city, and so I propose the name of the set is Mean Straits of Gadgetzan.
Waka 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 waka! Hey, waka waka!
All right, I had to. We're gonna get a walk in every episode. But it's. I really hope that with a pirate themed set, I want to remind everyone Mean Streets of Gadgetzan, which is very difficult to look at in a positive light in this meta, was not a pirate themed set. It was just a set that had some pirates in it, and I don't know if it's gonna be if pirates are going to be constrained to one card type if they're looking to make a whole set out of it. Like, there's no way
Yeah.
they can have every pirate be cheap and aggressive. They're going to build a set full of them, and so let's make sure we don't jump to conclusions, or if there's some other issue. Like, I don't want people to be upset about this set before it comes out just because they're sick of playing against pirates. I'm trying to find a more
Yeah.
eloquent way to say that, but there's no more eloquent way to say it.
I think they're gonna put a lot more thought into just saying pirates. I mean, there's already pirates. There's got to be something big and new. Like every time they've had an expansion, there's something new. Whether there's a whole storyline. With Mean Streets, there were the 3 different mixed classes, or there's the keywords that come out. Something else is gonna come up, and I'm pretty excited to see it. So.
Yeah, there was Death Knights in the last set and Quests in the set before that. I'm really interested to see kind of what the theme for this next set is going to be. Heard a lot of people talking about how they're worried that pirates are going to become overpowered, and it's kind of just like, we'll just have to wait to see what cards they put out. Galaka Crawler exists, and ideally we don't have to just have Galaka Crawler in every deck, but at least they kind of have a safety valve there. And I think they pretty much know what they're doing. Like the last 2 sets they've made have been great, and I see no reason to assume that this next set's going to come out, and even if there are a lot of pirates, then Pirate Warrior is just the best deck again. Like we won't know anything till we start seeing the cards actually come through, and I'm excited to see what their take is, and kind of even see what what the set might even be. I've heard a lot of cool rumors about what it might be.
All right, so I mentioned before that a little bit about Nemzi. I'm gonna call you again on this next one.
Okay, I know this one. Because I was watching his stream last night. So
well, first tell us about it. Yeah.
Yeah, so there was a little minor drama on Twitter last night, which a lot of people were kind of downplaying, but I think it's important to bring up. So Asmodai was streaming. He was pretty high legend. He was around rank 16, and he was playing, and he played against Monsanto. And somebody in his chat, or like 3 people in his chat, said, "Oh yeah, Monsanto snipes you." And he kind of just was like, "Oh, it's probably just chat, being Twitch chat." But they actually got a Twitch clip of Monsanto basically saying that he never stream snipes anybody except for Asmodai, and kind of so Asmo took that Twitch clip, posted it on Twitter. I retweeted it because I think it's important that people see that that's just not an okay thing. Stream sniping is cheating, and somebody who's kind of has a big name for themselves on the competitive scene, that's not really something you should be boasting. And he made a response that said, it was kind of just a bad joke, and he apologized for it, which is great that he apologized, but it just goes to show you kind of got to be careful what you say and what your actions are for stuff like that, because if taken out of content and taken out of context, then it can make you look pretty bad, like this Twitch clip did. And I'm just glad there's more publicity for stuff like that, so that hopefully we can try to stamp out a lot of stream sniping.
That's true. It needs to be it needs to be brought up to the attention of everybody. But I feel like if you're going to be streaming, you're always going to be in the limelight, and you got to always be politically correct and not be too. I mean, you have a sense of humor, and it's a fine line because I mean, look what happened at the tournament. If I'm streaming, I'm going to act as if I'm in a tournament. Like, I'm not going to be stream sniping. I'm not going to be joking around about it. So, yeah, that's what I feel. Hat, what about you?
Don't stream snipe.
There you go.
Just don't do it. It violates the competitive
dare.
integrity of the game. I know that the streamers quote unquote allow it by being online, but it's still the wrong thing to do, so don't do it. You don't get to see your opponent's hand any other time. Don't take advantage of a player that's trying to entertain people, especially a player or streamer that you watch, by punishing them for doing so. Please and thanks.
All right. Next part is a quick one here. So arena tickets don't expire. It's been confirmed by Ben Brode. So pretty cool. I will be looking forward to doing those on the other servers. And yeah, seems like fun. At least with the current arena, it seems really fun. I don't play too many arena, but most people will play arena as soon as it's available with that ticket. But it's good to know. Let's say you're on vacation, like you have your passport and you go on vacation and you don't have a chance to play Hearthstone. You can. I'm sorry. I feel bad.
Shots. Oh man.
I wasn't
okay.
listening, but I
comment
assumed
later.
that would make me sad if I was.
That hurts.
Yeah.
Probably not as much as what I was doing, but that's okay. So last thing I'm going to mention in the news before we head on to the next segment, because I want to keep the show rolling here. We have announced that the Con Before the Storm event on Thursday night, tomorrow night, is going to include, they've extended and actually got a second ballroom and upgraded the alcohol there. And guess who's going to be there for a meet and greet? It's going to be us, Concede. I'm going to get a confirmation about Bodicus to add him since he's going to be there, but he's going to be there. Whether he's sitting at the table or not, I don't think it would be that big of a deal if we added him and found a chair. But I mean, we're all here, so.
Either way, I will be at Con Before the Storm with a Concede shirt on. It'd be great if any listeners came up and said hi to me. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward. There's going to be some other people in the meet and greet as well. I was going to throw that up in Twitch, so I'll do that while you play the audio.
Yes. Oh yes, I have to do that.
Yeah.
The storm known as BlizzCon is almost upon us, and that means once again it's time for podcasters, community personalities, and fans to come together for one of the largest gatherings created by fans for fans. It's Con Before the Storm, featuring the 5th annual World of Podcast. It's shaping up to be our largest World of Podcasts yet, with participants from over 50 podcasts and additional content being produced before and after the big party at the Anaheim Hilton on November 2nd. Even if you can't join us in Anaheim, we do invite you to check out the shows on Alpha Geek Radio or at twitch.tv/ConBeforeStorm. Can't listen to us live? We have you covered with podcast versions of our content available for download on demand via our World of Podcast show feed on Google Music and Apple Podcasts. For complete information, show schedule, and much, much more, be sure to check out ConBeforeStorm.com, and also don't forget to follow us on Twitter at ConBeforeStorm and at World of Podcasts.
All right, so I linked it in here, and I found Major Death is going to be there too as a meet and greet. I think he's at 10 p.m. We're going to be there. What is our time slot? 9? Yeah, 9 to 9:45.
Yes.
And then if you're looking for us or for me under the Hearthstone panel, it's going to be at. Oh, I should have that pulled up. Let me pull this up here. It is at 7:15 to 8:30 p.m. So keep an eye out for that. Let's go ahead and talk about the tournament results. I'm going to kick it over to Hat.
It's
sorry.
the Grand Tournament!
No, Kenny, you're right. You are kicking it over to me, and we're going to talk
right.
about the Trinity series. Now, the Trinity series, for those of you that don't know, the Trinity is 3 teams, or 3-person teams that play together. Every match is played a best of 11 last hero standing. So each team submits a deck for all 9 classes. They ban 2 of the opponent's decks. After both teams have banned, they self-ban a deck. They pick one deck of theirs to ban, of their own. And then last hero standing means if your deck wins, you keep playing it. If your deck loses, you can't play it anymore. First team that has all their decks knocked out loses. First team to 6 wins takes it home. So, it's the team's complexity is Tyler, Crane, Mr. Yagoot, Tempo Storm is Trump, Eloise, and Just Sayin. We have Planet Odd, who is Zixo, Hoy, and Surrender. G2, which is RDU, Tyson, Nyria. Lothar actually filled in for Nyria for the first couple weeks. The Misfits is Stansifka, Pokervac, George C. Team Liquid is Dog, Show, and Fino. Team Love You Lots is Chalky, Muzzy, and Delay. I'll call them Team Lull from now on because that's what their team stands for. And Virtus Pro is Casey, Naaman, and Bunny Hopper. Dr. Hippie actually played for Virtus Pro for weeks 1 to 4. So these are all high-profile, high-skill teams filled with players from various regions. It's almost entirely NA and EU. In fact, I think it is entirely NA and EU. And the highlight of watching the tournament is that you get to hear the thought process of all 3 players talking together playing their turns. And these are long, long casts. We're talking matches that can be 2 hours for one match because it's best of 11, right? It's a ton of games. And especially considering that all the players have to play Warrior, and a lot of them brought Fatigue Warrior, a single game can be half an hour. So, going into week 4, Complexity was at the top with 3-0. Team Liquid, G2, and Virtus Pro were all tied at 2-1. The Misfits, Planet Odd, and Team Lull were at 1-2, and then Tempo Storm had not won a single match. They were 0-3. Now, week 4 was last week, basically while we were recording the show, the 25th and 26th. And we had the 4 matches. Team Liquid narrowly lost to Planet Odd. Liquid took an early 3-0 lead with Zulok, but Planet Odd answers with 3 wins with Quest Warrior, with Taunt Warrior of all things. And then after they traded a couple more games, a Noggenfogger ended a game. Pretty crazy. Bodicus, you watched this one, right?
Yeah, so basically, yeah, Team Liquid had the early 3-0 lead with Zulok, and Planet Odd came back with their Quest Warrior, which Team Liquid was finally able to break their streak with their own Quest Warrior. And then I remember seeing this game where it was Murloc Paladin versus Evolve Shaman, and the Evolve Shaman basically was behind on board for a lot of the game, and towards the end they had a Thrall evolve that when they were at basically no health, and it got Noggenfogger, and it was so close to getting them back in the game, but they the board was just a little bit too big for Planet Odd, and they had one of the random attacks go at the Noggenfogger, and they were able to close it out. It was actually like one of the last attacks they could have made to close out the game, but it was a pretty crazy game to watch. And then after that match, it was Tempo Storm versus Virtus Pro. And I've been watching the Trinity series kind of off and on, usually when I'm making dinner, trying to glean what I can. And the Tempo Storm obviously was having a bit of an issue getting wins, and there was a kind of a bit of I don't know, the communication between the team didn't seem very clear. They weren't clicking on all cylinders. But this week, week 4, Trump was actually not with them, so it was just Eloise and just saying playing together, and so they were able to pull out a pretty narrow victory and get their first match win of the tournament, keeping them actually in, so they still have a chance. The match the next day was actually G2 Esports versus Misfits, and this was significantly more one-sided. The Misfits had George C, Stan Sifka, and
Pokervac.
Pokervac, and Pokervac and Stan Sifka are usually in the same room when they play, and they kind of just found this groove with their Control Warlock deck, and were able to get 3 wins with it. One of them was a 38-minute Control Warlock mirror that basically came down to Misfits was significantly ahead in the fatigue. They were taking a lot more damage from fatigue, but they had an Elise pack that got them enough gas to finish the game. And I didn't get to see a lot of the last match, but it was Team Lull versus Complexity, and Complexity was 3-0 going into this, but they had a pretty rough match where they get 3-0'd by with Zoo, and then their Murloc Paladin kind of finished it off. So Complexity takes a rough loss of only winning 1 game to the 6 that Lull was able to take. And then I think, Hat, you saw the majority of week 5, right?
Yeah, well, week 5 I watched, but on that last week 4 match, Complexity, Team Lull, they actually were the only team to not self-ban Hunter last week, because what they did is they noticed their opponents were really riding on Murloc Paladin, so they brought a Hunter with Hungry Crabs, Knife Jugglers, and Unleash the Hounds, and just said, when they play Murloc Paladin, we're going to queue up this deck, and we're going to win every time. And that's exactly what happened. So Lull started off 3-0 with Zoo. Zoo got countered with Murloc Paladin, and then out come the Crabs, and all of a sudden the Murlocs all got gobbled up, but then the Hunter deck kept winning. It was the only Hunter played last week and this week. Every other team self-banned their own Hunter, so they wouldn't have to play it, and every team banned Druid and Priest both weeks. So this is the only time we got to see a Hunter, but hey, it went 3-0. 3 wins, 3 matches played, 100% win rate. Seems good. So for week 5, what we have here is we have Team Liquid versus the Misfits. This was a super duper close match, went to the full 11 games. And the thing about Last Hero Standing, if you haven't played it before, is that the typical way these matches play out is that both teams start with a deck that is kind of well-rounded, and then as soon as you lose, you know what your opponent's going to play again. So you pick something that beats that deck, and then they pick something that beats your deck, and you pick something that beats their deck, and so the only way to really consistently win is to break serve and win in an unfavored matchup, bring some decks that can high roll in general, and that's why a common strategy in a smaller format that has, 4 decks, a lot of times you bring Jade Druid and Tempo Rogue and Razakus Priest, all decks that kind of have a shot against the field. Or you can win game 1. So in this case, the Misfits won game 1, and then also George C's Tempo Rogue won 2 games. So that was enough, and the Misfits took this strategy to heart, and they brought Handlock, Control Paladin, and Fatigue Warrior that were all very clearly meant to counter some of the more aggressive decks, and they knew that when they got counter-queued into with more mid-rangey decks, they could queue up their aggro decks, and the opponent would queue up aggro, and then I queue up the control deck. So it worked out pretty well that way. Now, the next match, G2 Esports versus Tempo Storm. Well, this was unusual, because Saiyan's Tempo Rogue jumped out to an early 2-0 lead for Tempo Storm, but then RDU queued up Control Warlock and went 6-0. Not a game was taken off him. And you were talking about Elise Botticus. Elise has been an all-star in this tournament because there's a lot of Fatigue decks out there. And Fatigue Warlock and Fatigue Mage are both decks that we've seen. So RDU was playing a very removal-heavy deck, double Twisting Nether, Medivh was in there, and Elise and the Elise pack. So he actually got an Elise and played a Crystalline Oracle, and the next turn triggered Kalamos to clear out the Tempo Rogue. Pretty disheartening. And then Blood Reaver Gul'dan turned out to be good enough against all the control decks he was playing against. And then after that, the aggro decks just couldn't deal with the AoE, with the Hellfires and Defiles and Abyssal Enforcers and so on and so forth. And if you can watch any one game of the series, it would probably be Game 6 of this one. G2 stabilized an incredibly low life total, navigated the game very tightly. It was never really locked up, but they got it done, and RDU went 6-0 with his Control Warlock. It was pretty incredible. So, speaking of 6-0 with Warlock, the next match, Planet Odd versus Complexity. Hoy, who you may remember as he was last year's European champion, he started with Demon Zoo and he ended with Demon Zoo. 6-0. Did not drop a game. And if you watch a second game this series, game 2 right here, Demon Zoo got countered in the early game pretty hard with Doomsayer on curve. It was on turn 4, I think, and a very defensive opening, but it wasn't anywhere near enough. And Hoy masterfully balanced resource generation with life tap into Blood Reaver Gul'dan, kept his life total high, and was able to take down the Burn Mage. Serenek Chain Gang really performed for him against Rogue and against the Zoo Mirror, and then against all the other decks. His openings were just off the charts. Really, really incredible openings. A lot of early Kel'Thas, and against Taunt Warrior, you might think that Taunt Warrior is favored against Zoo. You would be wrong if every time you played against turn 2 Vicious Fledgling into turn 3 South Sea Captain. So, pretty impressive win with Hoy and Planet Odd, and pretty depressing for Complexity because they've won, one game in the past 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Yep, 1 game out of 13. That's not a great win rate.
But that kind of happens, right, with last Hero Standing, right? Like if you queue up your counter to their deck and the counter doesn't win, so you queue up your other counter and then that also doesn't win, then it's pretty easy to get swept the rest of the way because you can run out of counters pretty easily.
Yep.
If I understand it correct.
It's either a very tight series or blowouts. That's usually what we see because you have to depend on your counter decks working, but Hearthstone is still a game of percentage win rates, and you can't ever guarantee a win. You can't ever do it. So when you get those times, like you're talking about, Bot, where the counter decks get countered, then you will see these sweeps because there's nothing good against that deck left, and your options just kind of dwindle very quickly when you're playing LHS. So the last match we want to cover is Virtus Pro versus Team LUL. And the first game is a doozy. It was nearly a 30-minute Fatigue Warrior versus Burn Mage game, and it was very complex. The Chalky and his Burn Mage, they were playing towards Fatigue the entire time. They were resisting drawing cards. You saw some weird plays like Virtus Pro throwing out Battle Rages for 0. And, pretty incredible to see them just like thinning out their hand and not drawing cards. But then the Burn Mage at the end pivoted very quickly and just went, Alex you, burn you, burn you, burn you, you're dead. It was really amazing to watch. And in the middle of the series, Zalae's Jade Evolve Shaman, which was just Jade Shaman with Doppel Evolve in it, won 4 matches in the middle, including a pretty freaky win with double Jade Lightning. And Zalae on stream says, don't worry, no one ever plays around double Jade Lightning. The opponent did not play around double Jade Lightning. Bloodlusted to leave him at 7, and then next turn, start my turn, you're dead. And so Virtus only won in their last deck with Token Shaman, where they got up to 3 wins with that, and then they lost to Zoo with Nerubian Unraveler. So when you're under the gun and then Unraveler comes down on 6, and you look at that Doppel Evolve in your hand, kinda rough. So it worked out pretty well for Team LUL. So right now there's a 5-way tie for first place. Planet Odd and Virtus Pro are at 2 wins. Tempo Rogue only has 1 win. Every other team is at 3-2. So it's a very close series. And in terms of classes, Hunter is not even bad, it's just not played. Every single team is self-banning it, except when Team LUL had some really specific targeting in mind. And Druid and Priest have not seen a single game played since well before week 4, if at all, because they're the easy double bans. Everything else is being left up. Rogue is not being banned, it's being targeted, but Druid and Priest, there's a little bit too much variety in those decks and those classes, so it is just being removed from play, and we have seen instead a very fresh last Hero Standing meta. Comments?
That seems pretty. That makes a lot of sense, because if you can only ban one deck out of 4, it makes a lot of sense to ban Rogue in like the normal last hero standing formats and then just target your Druid and Priest. But if you can ban 2, I think, obviously the overall power level of Druid and Priest is probably a little higher than Rogue. So, if you get to ban those 2 classes, it makes a lot of sense for this format to be going after the Druid and the Priest for bans.
Sounds good.
Yes.
I'm gonna have to apologize now, just because there's been a different series I've been watching. It's more sports, not esports, but sports related. So we're at Game 7, and I'm just trying not to pay attention to the game right now because we're losing. So, yeah. Anything else we want to mention? I'm linking the links here in the chat. Just for the recaps, if you guys want to catch it, it is in our show notes. Shall we go over and talk about at least our listener league? Right, we have some congratulations to go over here.
I think we should talk about the listener league because it wrapped up this week, and we had quite the final. So we had the primetime players versus the Wild Salt Mares, Reganis Prime, Smiley Chris, and Blue Spartan versus Navalis, Man at Arms, and Fly That Kite. It was a close series, it went to all 3 matches. There was no early 2-0 here, but the primetime players took a narrow win over the Wild Salt Mares. So congratulations to Reganis, Smiley, and Blue Spartan. Much thanks to Navalis, Man at Arms, and Fly That Kite as well for your second place, for your final appearance. Nice job, well done. And thanks to everyone that helped run this, Cinder, of course. And then I think Midgame and the Avatar both were involved in getting this going. So thank you all to everyone that participated.
Yeah, really thanks to everybody who came out to participate and made it a thing that happened. It was good.
Yeah, there were a lot of people that pulled late, and we do appreciate those that did. So, Cinder, Midgame, yeah. And actually, Navilis just joined us in chat, so he just caught it. He's like, joining late, but hey, you didn't miss it. You're here. Yeah, so we want to talk about what we're going to do for the winners. What are the plans?
Well, the plans right now, what we're looking to do is during the last match, we had an exhibition match against someone in this very call, against Mr. Bodicus himself. He played against all 4 hosts at the time, so he emerged mostly victorious. I was able to salvage the show's honor and dignity. And then if you can't beat him, join him, so he is now part of the show. So we're looking to put together a 3-person squad of our own and have a little show match versus the primetime players. So the date will be coming after BlizzCon, some point in the near future. And watch this space. That'll likely be broadcast on this very channel if you're watching here now on Twitch. And if not, we're not sure if we're going to be able to make it fit into an episode content because it's going to be a lot of gameplay. But we're going to try. So we'll see what we can make happen there. But stay tuned. There will be a show match coming to you soon.
All right. So what else do we have upcoming? Let me kick it over to Bodicus. What are you excited that's coming?
So this weekend is going to be the Hearthstone Invitational. We went over it a little bit last week, but basically you have a good amount of popular streamers that are going to be participating in basically a big show match of some wild, some standard, and what's rumored to be maybe we get some previews of some new cards or just an interesting format that's somewhat unknown. So every team kind of has like their very popular streamer and then a popular pro player and then kind of an up and coming streamer. So yeah, if you guys have your virtual ticket, you should be able to watch this. I think you need to have the virtual ticket, I believe, to catch this, right?
Yes, you do.
But yeah, it should be some fun matches. There's a lot of cool personalities out there. I'm excited to see kind of what happens. I know some of them have been streaming a little bit of prep for the tournament. It should be an interesting interesting show match.
Yeah, and I think the extra category there is going to be more for the deck builders, just because they're probably going to be playing with some of the new cards and the new stuff. So I'm excited to see what may be a part of that. Even still seeing Wild and Standard, I'm just excited for BlizzCon. I can't wait to sit next to Hat and just have a beer and just enjoy watching Hearthstone.
Did you say beers? You said beers, right?
Beers, not beards, but beers.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that was plural.
There you go.
Yeah, the singular was problematic for me.
I'm sure we can make that happen.
Yeah, I feel pretty good about it.
All right, so I'm also curious to see. Oh, I was going to mention too, the BlizzCon announcement is not needed for the virtual ticket. You will hear the announcement for the opening ceremony, which everyone has access to. So if you don't have a virtual ticket, at least you'll get the announcement in there. So just wanted to mention that real quick. We got to mention that earlier. All right, let's kick it over to the thank you bridge.
Rock is dead.
All right. We did get 2 iTunes, and none of them were from the US. They were each from different countries. So I'm going to hear. Shall we even read this? It's a long one. Shall we skip it? No, I already mentioned it.
Let's do the highlights. So this is a review from. It's titled "New Favorite In-Depth Dive into Competitive HS" by McChillan Roberts, and this is from the UK. Was introduced to the world of Hearthstone podcasts a few years ago. Since then, I've been consuming every Hearthstone podcast I came across. To hearing Concede host another podcast, I added them to my weekly roster, and never look back. If you've been playing for a little while and want to improve your game, CC will keep you on fleek with the meta and assist you with your battle towards your Hearthstone goals, whether it's Legend or just being better than last season. Thanks for your hard work. So,
well done.
Props to that. I'm not sure how on fleek we keep you, but if we do that, I'm glad we do, though we'll say it's not generally an intention of the show.
That's true.
It's.
True.
I mean, we I just don't know what on fleeking is. So
yeah, me neither.
We might fleek by accident, but we're not purposeful fleekers.
My wife could probably tell us if she was here.
Yeah,
my wife would probably say they meant to say geek, but that's my wife.
They can both apply. All right,
they can both apply. I'm sure we'll get corrected in Twitch chat. Let's go over the short and sweet review here, Podicus.
So this review is great, or is titled "I Love This Podcast," and it's from Blister Guy from Australia, and it says, "Because it's great, it's really, really great." And you know what, Blister Guy, you're pretty great yourself.
I agree.
And if I was Tony, I would say you're great.
That's of course Blister Guy at the Walk to Work podcast. He does a tri-weekly show.
Yeah,
three shows a week, and it's a pretty great podcast. If you don't already listen to it, I definitely recommend it.
And he guested on Tier 5 this week. So if you like Blister Guy and you like Tier 5, well, you can have both this week.
And he does some wonderful graphics too. He's multi-talented.
What doesn't he do?
Yeah. He now
travel to the US.
Off. Yeah, that's true.
I'm too bitter.
Yeah. But yeah, he can legend on the cell phone and even during a podcast. So hey, he can do everything. Let's keep it moving. I want to try and get to some of the email questions. I know there's a couple we added and even some rapid fire ones if we want to get to that. But we have at least 3 deck doctors. 1, 2, 3, 4 deck doctors. 5 deck doctors. Oof. You ready to grab your scalpels and put on your stethoscopes?
It's okay, Kenny.
Calm down. I'm a doctor.
It's okay. Yeah.
It's the greatest battle cry.
We're gonna have a awesome title for the show too.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. All right, here comes the bumper. Are you ready for your snaps?
I'm ready. All right. I guess I'll start it. So it's Deck Doctor Week. Woo!
Woo.
I added my own little bumper there. So we have a Play Dead Wild Hunter from Rayganis Prime. We have a Jaded Prince from Volkai, and a Cruel Lock from Apex Predator. I liked his name for it. It says, "Don't be so cruel." We have Mid Games Anti-Aggro Warlock and SC2 Forever's Zoo Warlock. So, Hat, you do a really good job of kind of encapsulating things real quick here. You want to talk about each one individually and kind of talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, well, and Bot and I will probably pick these apart as well. And for this first one, Kenny, it's wild, so I'm actually going to shut up after I talk about what I think is the general concept of the deck. Before we get into Deck Doctor too much, I want to point out we're not going to give advice that just says take out all these cards that aren't meta cards and put in all these meta cards, because that's not helpful. That's just saying go to a tier list and play one of those decks instead. What we're going to try and do and say, we understand you want to play the concept of your deck, and we understand if we're doing this on Deck Doctor, these are not meta decks, and we're not going to say, after we're done with them, go on the ladder and you'll hit rank 1 legend, or even go hit legend at all. That's not what we're saying. We're going to say, if we're trying to do this concept, how would we do it, and can we make it a little bit more efficient, right? Can we make it a little bit more focused? Again, please use these decks with caution. By the time we're done with them, they are not going to be legend approved. They're going to be fun approved, but they're going to try and be a little bit more efficient fun. Okay.
I'm glad you clarified
Yes.
that we're not just adding cards from top tier meta decks.
Like, we're not going to go to this
There you
hunter and
go.
like, all right, take out the Play Deads and the Feign Deaths and the Nerubian Eggs and the Devilsaur
And,
Eggs and all
what,
the Death
let's-
Rattles.
Let's
and
just
add bear
not play.
sharks and animal companions.
Yeah.
And
It's no longer a Play Dead Wild Hunter. This needs to be a different deck.
Yes. Yes. So, the first deck, Rayganis Prime's Play Dead Wild Hunter, is exactly what you think. It's a Death Rattle heavy deck it's got a good amount of your normal Hunter cards in it, right? But you've also got a couple copies of Play Dead, you got a Feign Death, your Mad Scientist, which in Wild is pretty common, you have double Terror Scale Stalker, double Infested Wolf, there's a Bloodworm in here, there's 2 Corpse Widows, Sylvanas, I miss her, but again, I get to see her in World of Warcraft, she's very prevalent in that story. There's 1 Bone Mare, and there's a N'Zoth at the top end. So, I don't play a lot of Wild. Bot and Kenny, what do you all think you would do to make this deck maybe a little bit more efficient or focused, or just something that you think could be tried and hasn't been tried with this list?
I'm gonna jump in here real quick, and Bot, you could probably correct me. We'll say that. No,
I have some ideas.
with this deck, I find it's a little bit. It's more of like a control or mid game to control. It doesn't have a small early game because Play Dead is one of the 3 1-drops, and yeah. So it takes a bit to get started, and in Wild sometimes you can fall behind real quick on turn 1, 2, and 3, like Boticus was saying last week. So this can get you in trouble if you're playing against a lot of aggro decks. If you're playing with control, that's maybe a little bit better. But that would be my initial concern with this. But seems like it's got the right stuff and synergy with it. I'm not sure how. There may be some dead cards in this deck too, if you really think about it. But hey, I'm not picking apart his deck here. I told him, don't pick a standard Wild deck. Throw something else together. So yeah, not bad.
Yeah,
that's my comment.
So a couple of the things I'm looking at in here, I see he has the Mad Scientist to grab a couple explosive traps. I didn't really see exactly if that makes a whole lot of sense to be in there, but I guess if you have Play Dead, so you can help kind of trigger it, might be worth the inclusion. The biggest thing I saw is that Glaive Zuka seems really powerful in a deck like this. You have a couple eggs that don't have any power. If you can get a power onto them, It might be a little easier to trigger their death rattles. Plus, just the fact that Glaive Zuka costs a mana less compared to the Eagle Horn bow seems like it could be a pretty easy upgrade. Bloodworm seems a little slow to me for wild. I don't really know exactly what it's doing in this deck. I do like that Deathstalker Rexar can get you kind of a Bloodworm, but I don't know if we necessarily need it in this deck.
Not a lot of people know that. I'm actually drawing a blank at what Bloodworm is.
It's a 5 mana 4/4 lifesteal.
Oh, okay.
Beast. It's a beast. So yeah, I guess if you're trying to go a little later, you might need that life gain to get back in. But I think if you just had a slightly better early game, I'm obviously gonna say stuff like quick shot could help out here. But overall, I really like the concept of the majority of this deck. Like the Sylvanas is obviously great. Savannah Highmane, just one of the best hunter cards ever printed. But for the most part, I like a lot of what's going on here. I just, it definitely feels like you might fall a little too far behind in the early game. So I think adding, cards that could synergize well, like Glaive Zuka, might be a decent idea for this deck. Anything else to add, Hat?
Haunted Creeper. Put in 2 Haunted Creepers. Card is so good.
Yeah, that also seems good.
It's
wild.
it's wild. So the thing about decks like this is you don't want to overdo it with the death rattles because you end up Nazothing back a bunch of 1/1s and 1/2s, and you don't want to do that. But Haunted Creeper in the early game is really, really good, especially when you curve into Terrascale Stalker. I would absolutely be playing Haunted Creepers and Loot Hoarders. Those are the biggest 2 inclusions that I see that could really lower the curve of the deck and keep it going. And, beyond that, I agree with what's been said so far. It's just kind of about making sure the curve makes sense. And a deck like this, I would see it as putting constant pressure on the opponent and making sure that anything they do to remove it is ineffective. So I love the Nerubian eggs. I think the Devilsaur eggs are pretty cool too. When you get to curve Stalkers and Play Deads, I'm not sure why we're not playing Double Feign Death. I feel like that is actually a pretty important inclusion. And it's really just about, I think, honing the concept for me. I would take out the explosive traps, the Bloodworm, the explosive shot, and I would strongly consider Double Feign Death, Double Stitch Tracker. I'm not sure you need the tracking. It really depends on the wild metagame. I don't know it as well as Kenny or Bodicus or Rayganis. They're all wild professionals. But it's really just a question of what is your core game plan here? And I see a core game plan, and I see a bunch of cards that kind of exist outside of it, and some cards that would work really well in the core game plan that aren't included. And I would want to just tweak that a little bit. And especially with Corpse Widow, you can go Corpse Widow and drop a couple free minions. That's a really nice turn 5 swing turn. You're muted, Kenny.
I'm going to do that multiple times. I apologize. I had to mute it while my son came in. Regarding the 4 more that we have to go, I'm going to try and keep my comments minimum here. So let's go over the Volkai's Jaded Priest. Hat, take it.
Jaded Prince. It's a prince, not a priest.
I said prince. I said yes. Priest. I meant prince.
It's a princely priest, except it's a druid. So this is Jade Druid, but with Prince Keleseth. Whoa! Now, there's a lot going on here. What there isn't is 2 wild growths. So I need a lot of convincing that Prince Keleseth is better than wild growths. So otherwise, we're looking at a nearly standard Jade Druid list, except there are Innervates instead of wild growths. There is a Serenite Chain Gang. There is a Cobalt Scalebane, and there are 2 Bone Mares. And I'll flip this to Bodicus, but my first comment is I don't see enough Keleseth juiciness. I want...
Can? Go ahead. Finish your thought. Oh, I was going to mention, as far as this, just my short comment is, if you're going to have Keleseth, you're going to want to try and be more minion heavy and not have as many spells in it. So like Swipe, Nourish,
Agreed.
So when I first looked at this deck, I kind of was thinking the same thing as Kenny, that it seemed slightly creature light. I mean, the tempo rogue decks nowadays are playing something like 28 creatures in their deck, so that the Keleseth is getting a lot of value. I do like the idea, but I'm wondering if we could do something. Oh, sorry. Uh, Minions is what I meant. Uh, so uh, I'm wondering if we could potentially do something different. Maybe, what if we thought of this more like maybe a tauntish druid deck? Maybe we can put something together um, that utilizes, like, you still get your Serenite Chain Gangs and some of these uh, powerful minions, but uh, maybe there's an idea for having, like, why can't I remember the name of the card? How long can this, or not that
Serenite
one?
Chain Gang and Strong Shell
And
Scavenger.
yeah, Strong Shell Scavenger. We could also do that popular 3-drop
Tar Creeper.
that is, yes, that one, and also the one that discovers a taunt minion.
Oh, Stonehill
And this is,
Defender.
yeah,
Out of my jungle.
out of my jungle, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe you can fit some more creatures if you went for more of that route in there. And there's not a whole lot of great 2-mana taunt minions that I can think of.
Quick
So
question:
that would be the other idea for me.
How do you feel about having Jade in it? Like, I feel like the Jade doesn't get any benefit from. Well, I mean, I guess you get the original minion, but if you have like the Jade Spirits, you'll have the Jade Spirit get it, but it doesn't affect the Jade itself.
Correct.
I guess you're still getting something from it, but
Well, it's Idol, Blossom, and Behemoth are all super duper good, and you're still
Mhm.
going to play Ultimate Infestation. So
Yeah.
the Jade package, there have been fast Jade decks that have seen play with Mark of the Lotus and that take a more aggressive approach. And I think what we're talking about here is mid-range Jade Druid, as opposed to the current incarnation, which is more of a not quite a combo deck. Basically just the greediest mid-range deck ever. That's more like a ramp druid is what we have now. And so by cutting a decent amount of the ramp, I think it'd be reasonable to take out Innervates. You could leave in Mire Keepers. And Nourish is not even a bad card, but just I think more in on the Jade theme. I like or on the Keleseth theme. I like the idea of throwing in some beefy mid-range taunts and just shoring up, say, the Zoo matchup or the Murloc Paladin matchup, and you still get to play the good spells, but since you're cutting Wrath and Wild Growth, you need to have something to save you against decks with early game because you have taken a lot of your early game out of the deck, and you may even need to put in something like Mistress of Mixtures,
Mhm.
just to make the early game survivable. Because right now, it's if you want to play something before turn 3, it's Jade Idol, unless you draw Keleseth, and that's a little too slow, but for my liking.
Yeah, I guess the other thing we can kind of think about, though, is that even though this deck has a lot more spells in it, you have cards like Nourish and Ultimate Infestation. So the biggest problem with Keleseth decks is that, sometimes the game doesn't go on necessarily long enough for you to get the value of actually drawing the buffed cards. Whereas if you have these big draw spells like Nourish and like Ultimate Infestation, it is possible that those might help catch you up. To actually getting the value that you want off the Keleseth. I think it's definitely an idea worth trying, but like Hat said, Wild Growth is just the most powerful ramp spell, and not having it in the deck makes me weary that this is necessarily like going to be able to be a top tier deck. But definitely piqued my interest now that I've thought about it more.
There's a lot of high cost of minions in there, so not having the ramp too early it seems hard. It'd be a grueling task there. Let's keep it rolling here. If you guys don't mind, we're gonna go over Apex Predator's Cruel Lock. I'm gonna take a sidestep on this because I'm not really good with singleton decks, but I really like the idea of Cruel. Bot, you want to start?
Yeah, so I'm going over all the cards, seeing if there's anything that kind of stands out to me. I really like the Illidan Storm Rage. That's always a card that people point to as a legendary that never really made it, but it definitely feels like this card that could potentially be very powerful. So I'd be interested to see how it actually does. And it's a demon, so obviously goes really well with kind of the theme of the deck. On the second rate bruiser is the only card that really kind of stands out to me like a sore thumb, um as maybe could be something else. But overall, I like a lot of the choices in this deck. Obviously Galaka Crawler could be hit or miss. I'm kind of wondering what your opinion of these non-priest singleton decks is, about, why we haven't necessarily seen Warlock be as common as priest, or and why mage also. Like, what would it take to necessarily get these decks on par with some of the other decks like priest?
I mean, Warlock generally, it's the singleton decks. A lot of times, Control Warlock isn't actually good right now, because Jade Druid and Razakus Priest are both really really bad matchups, and I don't know. It's Cruelly Unshackled solves a problem that the deck never had. It's never been you get to the late game and you're Warlock and you don't have enough threats or enough removal quickly. Frequently, you want to meter your threats against decks that have wide removal, and so Cruel kind of sidesteps around that and says, "No, I'm going to play all my threats at once, and either you're going to deal with it and you're going to not." But that's never really been a compelling proposition. Eh, Ink Master Solia didn't see a ton of play in Mage. The reason Reno Mage saw play was Reno, and Reno Lock saw play because Reno. And you look at the trade off that Priest gets in exchange for running a singleton deck, then you get to actually invent a win condition that is better than most decks in the format. That's worth it. For this deck, you get Kazakus and a turn 9 win condition. Well, Control Warlock, as you can see from another deck that we put on screen from midgame that's a similar concept, an anti-aggro Warlock, Control Warlock has not ever had problems finishing out the game in the late games, because if you survive, you just play fatty boom booms that you life tapped into and you win. So if we're gonna play Cruel, we're solving a problem that we don't really have. Now, with that being said, if I were building Cruel Lock, I think this is pretty close to how I'd build it. And those of you audio listeners out there, I know we're not reading the deck list. I'm not going to read you 30 cards one by one, but it's a pretty straightforward list, honestly. It's got most of the cards you would expect from Control Warlock, and there's a little bit of spice in there. Illidan Stormrage and Second Rate Bruiser, as was talked about. You get to play Mountain Giant and Twilight Drake, but you also get to play some lesser played cards. You get Medivh and the Lich King. You get Cruelly Unshackled. You get to fit in your Earthen Ring Farseers and your Mind Control techs and your Blast Crystal Potions. And a lot of the hits of Reno Lock of yesteryear, you weren't playing then. That was a deck that had all one-ofs, but you got to play Reno Jackson, which, set your life total back to 30, which is a really powerful effect after you've been trading your life total for cards for the entire game. As it stands, if I were building Control Warlock, it would be consistent to escape the early game, because that is one of two of Warlock's biggest Achilles heels right now as a control deck. It's escaping the early game and then beating the decks with the late game, because you're kind of really good in the middle, but if you get rushed down and you can't deal with it, you die. And if you're facing Jade Golems or Raza Anduin, you die. So you have to win somewhere in the middle here, and the singleton decks are just not as consistent. And I think that is the biggest issue here.
I think the most notable card I see missing is Dirty Rat. What do you think? It feels like Dirty Rat could see a spot in this deck. It feels like it helps out with a bit of your matchups, plus you have the combo with Mind Control tech.
It's decent. You have to have a meta where that's relevant, because you can try and hit a Raza against a priest, and if you do, congratulations, but you have to play Dirty Rat before they have 5 mana. And if you hit Velen instead of Raza, then congrats, you probably lost. So you have to be really, really careful about how you use it, and it's good against Quest Mage. It's against a lot of decks, it's kind of a liability, but if you're in a spot in the meta where it's not, I would definitely recommend playing it. I don't know. What do you think, Kenny?
I'm ready to move on. Actually, I was going to mention we're going to throw up all of the decks in the show notes,
Yes.
and hopefully with the link for the lyrics part of your download. So if you download it, you should be able to click on it and view it as you're listening. So good to go there. I'm going to keep my comments so we can keep moving. We have mid games anti-aggro warlock. That's a standard deck. I'm going to kick it over to Hat and go over this.
So, anti-aggro warlock, we have a lot of builds of control warlock out there. There's a pretty core, probably about 15 to 20 cards that you can expect to see on ladder, right? There's Void Walkers, Defiles, Doomsayers, Tainted Zealots usually go along with it. Stonehill Defender is pretty common. Shadowbolt is pretty common. Hellfire, you see a lot. Despicable Dreadlord is in all of them. Siphon Soul's in all of them. And you usually see some kind of top end. Blood Reaver Gul'dan, then usually a big drop. This particular one has Lich King and Alexstrasza. And you almost always see Skulking Geist because otherwise you cannot beat the card Jade Idol. This particular list is early game heavy. There's a Corrupting Mist, there's a Blood Mage Thalnos, a couple Mistress of Mixtures, as well as Tar Creeper and Spellbreaker, and then you've got an Elise for the fatigue matchups. Now, what we see from these decks is just, can you deal with the aggro decks, and can you deal with the control decks like we talked about before? This build is more consistent. With that being said, I think if I'm going anti-aggro, I play Golakka Crawler every time, and it's Control Warlock is in a weird place in the meta right now because anti-aggro doesn't always mean what you think it means. If you get Gul'dan first, sure, you got a lot of twisting other, sure, but Blood Reaver Gul'dan is still a beating, and Tempo Rogue still generates a lot of value. And I'd be curious to see if this deck actually beats the aggressive decks that are performing the metagame right now, because they're not your garden variety aggro decks. The days of Pirate Warrior or even old Murloc Paladin were kind of, if you outlasted them, you probably won. Now these aggro decks left have staying power. Tempo Rogue is more of a mid-rangey kind of deck, and Zoo has a really powerful early game, but life tap into 5-drops and Bone Mares and Despicable into Gul'dan. There's a lot more to the late game than there used to be. So, I don't know. What do you think, Bodicus? What's been your experience with this kind of archetype?
So I played a bit of Control Lock a little while back, and I did feel like it actually had some really good game against the aggressive decks. I definitely felt favored. The biggest notable card it seems like the deck is missing is the 7-drop, and I'm looking it up because I can't remember. Abyssal Enforcer. Seems like you miss out on quite a bit of power not having that in the deck to be able to bring back with Blood Reaver Gul'dan. That was always kind of a all-star card for me when I was playing the deck because it's just a big body that also clears the majority of their board. I think a big thing is that you would want probably Shaman to be kind of a bigger portion of the metagame, because a deck like this kind of just trashes on Shaman. It was actually I think it was a good choice back when Evolved Shaman was one of the bigger decks. Most of the cards in this deck look pretty standard and look like stuff I'd want to keep in there. Corrupting Mist kind of stands out to me, but maybe you need another early game card. Shadowbolt, maybe not quite powerful enough. So there's definitely a few flex spots in here to be able to add some stuff. But what do you think, Kenny?
Again, I'm gonna. I don't play control decks too much, so I'm very, especially since I have Warlock already at cap. So I haven't played too much of it, and I really wouldn't have much to add to that. So, but let's keep it going. We have one more, which is SC2 Forever's Zoo Warlock. We're generally going to go over a Zoo type deck. This has a lot of the generalizations of what a normal Zoo is. Like Hat was saying, there's Void Walkers, Soulfire's some, Malkazar's Imp, Flame Imp, Blood Imp, Prince Kel'Thuzad, South Sea Captain, everything. The only addition that's kind of different would be a Blood Fury potion. But yeah, just generalization. What stuck out to this deck. Pat, you want to add anything?
Well, so Zoo right now is about 20 core cards, about 8 flex spots, and then about 2 tech cards. That's usually about what you can fit in. And you have to choose, do I run the Crystal Weaver package? That usually means I run Blood Imp. Do I run South Sea Captains and Patches? And then, if not, do I run Vicious Fledglings? Do I run Serenite Chain Gangs? Do I run Blood Fury Potions, which has actually been popping up in a few lists? And do I fit in any Spellbreakers or anything else? This list, the tech cards, I would say, are Mortal Coils, Blood Imps, Blood Fury Potions, and Crystal Weavers. Now, on top of that, I personally, I would not play the. I don't think I'd play the Crystal Weaver package right now. It's all right. I do really, really like Serenite Chain Gang in this meta. I don't think you can get away with not playing 2 of those. I haven't found Mortal Coil to be as useful. I haven't found Blood Imp to be as useful either. If you're not playing Crystal Weaver, it's actually just bad. And even with
Yeah.
Crystal Weaver, I've been kind of unimpressed with it. And I think you need South Sea Captain and Patches. It's too good, especially when you get Keleseth to not play. So the list I've been running has had Vicious Fledglings in it, and I enjoy those. I've also seen a bunch of lists with Darkshire Councilman. And Blood Fury Potion, I think, is actually pretty potent. The 3 drops can flex a lot based on what you're seeing in the meta. But I don't know. It's really hard to talk about specifics with the Zoo list because there's so many different ways to build it. And the list that we're looking at right here, again, audio listeners, I know we're not going card for card here. This is a pretty standard Zoo list with some choices, but not really tech that I think is blowing any of us away and saying, wow, this is new, we've never seen it before. So what I'd recommend for you for your Zoo list is check out a bunch of different resources. I compile Warlock for Vicious Syndicate, and I look through a bunch of lists. The websites I use are beerbrick.com, disguisetoast.com/decklist, and hearthstonetopdecks.com. And I'll go to all of those, and I will select the classes that I'm looking at, which is usually Warlock when I write the report. And then just look at all the lists together and see what stands out, what you like, what you don't, and you can choose which cards you want to take and which cards you don't. But there's any number of ways to build this right now, and a lot of tech spots, about 10 slots in the deck that you can play around with. There's a pretty specific list of cards that I think is powerful enough. And so I would just pick what you want to play from those choices. But take it like a buffet. Pick the cards you want. You don't have to play an exact list. You can take 2 cards from this list and 2 cards from that list. But it's the core of Zoo is very, very powerful. The deck is good.
Yeah, I actually saw a YouTube video that Firebat did that said Blood Imp is meta-defining and you should have it in every one of your Zoolock decks. And I haven't had a ton of experience with this, and I know you are not a huge fan of the Blood Imp, but I actually think it provides quite a bit of value. It definitely feels like it could be good enough. But if you are playing the Blood Imp, I think that Blood Fury Potion is a must because 3 mana Blessing of Kings is pretty good. I definitely remember, though, watching part of the Trinity series, and Frodan just kept kind of poking Reynad about Blood Fury Potion because I think that Reynad is not a big fan of that card in these decks. But yeah, I mean, it's a zoo. It's a zoo list. I think I kind of like the Blood Imps for the value that it provides over the course of the game, but it's kind of really, you just got to try out the different flavors and see what's working for you, and that would be my recommendation for playing Zoo in general.
All right. That does it for the doctor segment, as we put it. Shall we cover the email quickly before we go over through our outro?
Yeah. We have one question we've been sitting on for a while that I really like to get to.
And it was actually answered pretty well, so I think we got to give thanks to Mark Shire as well. Ben, you talk the quickest, I say.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Whoa, you're the most heavy metal thing I've ever seen!
All right. So, we got a question from Dramaset in Discord. I just caught up in episode 105 about sticking to the plan. You mentioned choosing being the aggressor, going face versus defensive, trading in board clears, and sticking to it from the start. In past episodes, though, you've mentioned knowing when the right time to switch from trading to going to face is key. It seems like there are two conflicting strategies and pieces of info. Is there this hybrid defense then offense strategy for some decks? Maybe Zoo is one of them. What are others you'd play this way? So, we have talked about this a bunch, but the best answer that we have on this is not from any one of us. It's from a good friend of mine named Markshire. He is a THL buddy, and he answered this question extensively in Discord. We're actually going to read about half of his answer, the Cliffs Notes version, but feel free to go to Questions for the Cast and scroll up if you want to see it. It's really in depth, and again, it will also be in the show notes. So, this is what he said. I'm going to quote his answer verbatim. This is a complicated question to answer, but I will start by saying that these two pieces of advice aren't necessarily conflicting, and in many cases, the optimal line in a game will involve some combination of offense and defense. Most decks classified as aggro or mid-range look to control the board and trade almost every time in the early game, and then see when they can afford to go face and close the game out in 2 to 3 turns in the mid to late game. Say that in a certain game scenario, the optimal line of play gives you a 65% chance to win. We'll say that this, line A, is the defensive one. Then there's line B. Line B is not necessarily optimal. It's a line where you play extremely aggressively by going face and recklessly playing your cards. This line will give you on average a 50% chance to win. It's clearly worse. But then there's line C, where you start by throwing out all your cards on the board as fast as you can and go face. But then you have no cards in hand, you realize the line you took was wrong, and start trading with all of your minions. That isn't going to work. That's straight up a losing combination of the strategies that you could have chosen at the beginning of the game. It's like when you do one of those old choose your own adventure books, and you leave your finger by the page so you can flip back to the option you didn't take. You don't get to do that in Hearthstone. You don't say, I'm going to take the left path, but if I don't like that, I'll just go back and pretend I took the right path. You can't switch midstream. So if you started the game off with line B, where you're going really aggressively, a lot of times you're better off continuing to play aggressively. There's a chance you win by just going face. If you start deciding halfway through that you're going to go for the board control strategy after you've been going face, then you have a much worse chance at winning. Thoughts?
Yeah, so I had some things that, this was a really great response. There's a lot of great info in here. But my kind of take on the whole thing is you can kind of think of your creatures as almost repeatable burn spells. So the advantage of trading in the early game is that you get to, if you take value trades in the early game, you kind of get to reuse your burn spells at their face. And so your goal of trading early is so that you get to attack with a creature multiple times. Now, obviously, that's not usually how the games of Hearthstone go, but if you, get to attack with your 2/2 minion multiple times, and, it's basically, you get the extra value of, keeping the board clear. So if you can, like for instance, I was playing a decent amount of Secret Mage, and you would have your Mana Worm and your Arcanologist and the 4/3, and be able to, so a lot of times you would want to be trading with your 2/3 into their minions to protect your 4/3 to get multiple attacks with your 4/3, getting extra damage in. So I guess the short answer of it is you trade in your minions early so that you can afford to have your bigger minions in the later game go face and finish the game. Is, I guess, kind of what I wanted to add to that. So like good examples of this is basically Tempo Rogue, Zoolock, and kind of Secret Mage. Is they all have these early games that look to kind of build up their board, and then you basically get to this point where your cards are not going to be as powerful as the cards your opponent is playing if they're playing a more controlling deck. So eventually you need to just start going face, because they're going to be able to start value trading into your stuff, and you if you wait too long to start going face, then you might not be able to close out a game.
I'd like to add early Hunter has grandmother and things that you can kind of trade, or they have some early game that can work with that too. I don't want to really add much there. You both spoke so spoke so well, and I know you didn't get to really say anything. You want to say anything about this? You basically spoke for Markshire.
I think that I can cap my extra thoughts here. Boddick has summarized it pretty well. I mean, usually the advice I give when I'm trading is only trade if it means more damage to face over 2 turns. And a lot of times, like you're talking about with Hunter or with Pirate Warrior, you would trade in the patches so the deckhand lives. It's that kind of trading is aggressive trading, and that's okay. It's initiative is a hard concept to understand and an even harder concept to master. And this is, I think, the single most important skill in Hearthstone outside of maybe mulliganing. And it's super difficult to compress and explain in a podcast format. It takes a lot of intuition and subtlety and practice. So practice, try it. There's going to be some decks that play. Every deck is going to play a little bit differently this way. There's the days of going all face all the time are pretty much gone. I don't see too many decks and too many formats that can still do that, and Blizzard has nerfed most of the cards that have done that. It used to be the case back when you had 2/1 Leper Gnomes and
Yeah, not many cards or answers.
well, and you would top out at Leroy, but every other card in your deck costs 3 or less. It's a bygone era.
Which I think is good. I think having to make those difficult decisions on when you trade and when you don't trade makes the game a lot more interesting. And I was going to say something else, but it's left me.
It's gone. It's long gone.
It's gone.
That must mean it's late. We should keep going. Alrighty, so let's hit our outro here. If you want to send in your questions, we're saving some questions for next time. Probably not the Mare and the Fox predictions. Probably not some of the stuff that's going to be announced here at BlizzCon. But hey, we'll have a lot to talk about anyway. So sorry we didn't get to them, and thank you for sending them in. If you'd like to send it in, send it to coinconcede@gmail.com. I did want to say thanks to Stefan L. for letting us use his cover. You can check him out on his channel, which is linked in our show notes on our website, coinconcede.com. Let's give thanks to Old Guardian here for his tournament statistics. We're going to add that in the show notes as well. And he has his link in our show notes. Twitter is @coinconcede.com. Facebook.com/coinconcede. Discord.coinconcede.com. And shop.coinconcede.com. Maybe a little too late if you're seeing us live at Con Before the Storm or BlizzCon, and hope to see you guys there. Let's give a big thanks to our producers, Rayatis, Psychmopko, Reganis Prime, and Calum CV. Thank you so much for being a big support of our podcast. We do appreciate it. And let's hit our shout-outs. Bonicus.
So this week I wanted to shout out Spivey. I know that he made a real push this month to try to hit Legend for the first time and came up just a little short. I know he got to rank 1, but he got 400 games in this month, and he recently spoke on his episode of 1600 Dust about kind of his mindset for the month, that he just wanted to get his 400 games, and if that means he hits Legend, great, and if not, he'll try again next month. And I just think it's so important that people hear that and know that it's okay to miss your goal slightly. And he knows that he's a better player this month than he ever has been before, and I just wanted to shout him out for spreading a great message.
Yeah, I'll second it. I got to rank 1, and I wanted to hit Legend and Wild. Never hit Wild Legend, so try again next time. I guess that means I'll have to get started earlier and get more games in, and not just become lackadaisical in the second 2/3 of the month. So yeah. And Hat, what about you?
I'm going to give a shout out to Not Rob, who, first of all, we're going to see tomorrow. Pretty excited.
Yes.
And
I think he's already here.
Yes. Well, he's in flight right now because Japan to LA is lengthy and complicated with time zones. I don't know if he's going into the future or the past, but
yeah,
he might be going back to the future. So either way, I need to get a Great Scott bumper. I'm going to write that down.
Great Scott.
So he gave me a lot of advice over the past couple weeks in helping me polish my craft at editing the show. And I want to also give shout out to the listeners. We've had to do some restructuring here, and I'm doing a lot of the audio stuff, and it's newer to me than I'd like for it to be. But thanks to help of people like Rob that have given advice, I think we're getting to a better place at just controlling all of the show weekly tasks and making sure we get everything done in a timely fashion. So thank you to Rob, especially for putting together. He made me a half-hour video on how to edit the show and how he does Velen's shows, and it was a really amazing amount of work. So big props to him. It's really nice to have friends in the podcasting community, and big props to all of you for listening throughout and giving me helpful feedback wherever it might be coming from, or just continuing to keep us on your little podcast app. As long as you keep downloading, we're happy, and don't ever be afraid to reach out and give us feedback or ask questions or comments or concerns or whatever it is you want to tell us. You're even welcome to mail us snacks, as a couple of our patrons have, and those are appreciated maybe most of all, because as much as I love feedback, I can't eat it.
No, but we do love the feedback, and we were fully expecting to get some after last episode. So I was trying to take some of the heat, and Hat, you're just trying to take it away from me. So we appreciate everyone's help. I love not Rob. I want to give him a great big old hug because he does nothing but give and give and give. But he's a really great guy. So speaking of great people, I'm going to give my shout out to my wife. She's not going to hear this, but hey, she still needs a shout out. So she's 8 months pregnant, and she is going to be with the kids alone for like 3 days, basically. So I'm going to let her be in the morning tomorrow, and then I'll head out to the Con Before the Storm, and you guys will get to hang out with me. I get to have fun while she's doing all the dirty work of feeding the kids, keeping the house clean, just all the stuff that, man, she's a wonderful person. I'm glad, and I'm very happy to be with her. I could never tell her or thank you enough. So I'm gonna go give her a hug and a kiss after this. All right, so that's my shout out, and that does it. We're done with the show. Oh, remind me, I should send you a T-shirt. It's a great Scotch. I gotta find that for you.
I want it so bad.
Great, and it's a picture of him too. I'll have to find it for you. But okay, let's do our shout outs. Bodicus start first.
So you can
or not
follow...
our shout outs, but our contact information. I'm done.
I knew where you were going. All right. So you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at BodicusHS. Follow me on Twitch. I finally got out of my rut and streamed a little bit again on Sunday. That's twitch.tv/Bodicus. And real quick, also just wanted to thank everybody. I've gotten a lot of really positive feedback about me helping out on the cast. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate everybody who's kind of bearing with me, because I'm still trying to figure a lot of stuff out, and I'm going to be working hard at doing the best job I can when I get the fortune of joining these guys on the cast.
Yeah. All right, and I'm just going to sneak Cora in here. Cora, you can find her casting Hearthstone continuously, forever and ever, hopefully. And her Twitter is at songbird_HS. She's on twitch.tv/coin, Songbird Cora. And yeah, Hat.
Hi. You can find me on Twitter at RidiculousHat. You can find me on Twitch, twitch.tv/RidiculousHat. I'm normally Mondays and Thursdays. It is this week not Monday or Thursday, because this past week I was still on vacation. I took kind of a day off, and then on Thursday I will be at BlizzCon. That's tomorrow. So you can find me at BlizzCon. Feel free to if you're there. I'll be wearing a hat that says Ridiculous on it. So look for that, because that'll be me.
Yes.
And I'll be on Discord as much as possible, though I make no promises about my availability over the next 3 days, because it's going to be just a rocket ride to the future, and I think the Wi-Fi in the Anaheim Convention Center will be under more pressure than it's ever been on. So
yeah,
we'll see. But feel free to tag me if there's something you want me to look at, or you got a joke, you got a pun, and yeah. And you're welcome to add me on BattleNet, but I am pretty much permanently hovering at 199 friends. So I may not respond to all friend requests right away or may not add you. It's not a comment on you, I promise, but I have really limited space and I use it a lot for league play as well and for coaching. So those slots are unfortunately hotly contested. So if I don't add you back, it's not you, it's me.
Oh, and I wanted to slip in there since you were talking about Twitch. There may be Twitch swag at this event too. I'm sorry, I'm just rubbing it in everybody's face. I'm sorry if you're not going. I really wish you could be here. Those who are showing up, I hope I get pictures with you and we get to hang out. I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm just super excited. So, yeah, you can find me on Twitter at KCCO_gamer and on Discord. Just at me. I'll be there. So let's get on to the World Series. Hopefully we're not losing too bad. All right, so keep calm and chive on. And if you see us on ladder, coin concede.
Coin concede.
Coin concede.
Take cold comfort in your victory.
You win. I can rest now. You win. For now. Now, your victory proves nothing.
The day is yours.
I choose death.
You have triumphed. This time.
This hunt is yours.